Back over to Fusion here. In this component, I want to use one of our automation tools on this design. And I've got this rim here. And what I want to do is I want to essentially bridge this gap between these. And, to model that geometry, it's probably going to be fairly organic. It's probably going to be pretty complex on top of it. And to try to model that would be probably some pretty complicated traditional features, right? I would have to create several sketches or try to, create a bunch of extrusions and then blend it all together. I'm not going to do any of that. So in this case, I'm just going to use the automated modeling. And this step does take a little bit of clicking. So you'll see me in here just going through, selecting the faces I want to bridge. And then I just want to snap to the corresponding faces on the inside location. And then from this, I'm just going to tell the software, as far as the automated modeling tools, some additional options. So in this case, I want to tell it, there's some tools that I have the ability to specify areas I want it to avoid. In this case, I don't have any. And then the operation is, do I want to create a new body from this, which I potentially am going to use to merge into this design, or do I want to make a whole new part? In this case, I'm going to tell it to create a new body. And then from here, I'm just going to tell it to generate the shapes. And this is going to take a minute, but what it's doing is it's looking at the geometry that I've selected and looking at potential ways to create that geometry, creating that massive shape within this part. So it's kind of when it's finished, it's going to give me a number of alternatives, different options that I can choose from within the environment here, just kind of based on the shape that I've selected. This tool doesn't exist in Inventor at all. We have some very generic tools that could potentially try to do this, but they don't do it like this at all. And the amount of steps required are grossly longer than what this is. So we'll just give this a moment. And so in this case, we can see that alternatives 1 and 2 are fairly solid. And as it starts to finish up generating them, it will then update to reflect the changes that it's made for those shapes. And within each one of these, as it creates it, as it finishes generating them, you'll end up with a slider bar on it that allows you to then very quickly come in and adjust essentially the energy that it's used to create the shape. And so, we can increase or decrease the overall mass of that profile. And what each one of these is really going to start showing in here is, as I cycle through these, it's really just the shape of the removal is going to be different for each one. But the general idea here is that it allows me to, cycle between each one and kind of give me an idea of, okay, well, do I want a complete massive shape, or do I want something that's a little more, quote unquote traditional with just like cylinders of volume? In this case, I kind of like number 1 and the minimum energy there. Gives me still plenty of support material for the internal of this rim. But again, I can very quickly cycle between these and just take a look at each one and adjust the settings as I go. Let's use number 2. That one looks pretty good. With this, I'll hit OK. Software's going to turn. And generate the mass. From here, this is an individual body, and if you're used to working with multiple bodies in a file, each one of these represents its own individual piece. So realistically, the next step of this would be to merge all of this together. The steps to do that are pretty straightforward. We would just select all of these bodies and tell it to create a new body out of them. However, we're not required to, right? We can work with this component exactly as it is with no issues. And I can continue to work on this, adding new blends, continue to sculpt on this, punch the holes for the rim itself, or for the mounting of the rim. And again, just create very complex geometry very, very quickly.